What am I even trying to say here? Well, let's just go for it. Let's talk about the controversial one of Timothy Dalton's 2 James Bond movies. So, License to Kill is one of the Bond movies with a very mixed past. And on a number of occasions, people have told me they watched it and they seemed a little confused, not sure what to make of it. But there's something about this film I really like. Let's not waste any more time. This 1989 film wasn't considered a box office success. It made some weird decisions. And after 12 years of the Roger Moore style, which continued into the living daylights, it was a departure in tone. This film was dark. In my James Bond box set, it was the only one rated 15s. Then, in the minds of people, it probably didn't help that after this film there was a 6-year gap in the series. We went from Cold War to the 90s. Near the end of 1989, the world changed, and suddenly our Cold War hero was completely out of place. License to Kill occurs just on the cusp of that event. The film wants to do 2 things simultaneously. 1, stick to the Fleming roots. You heard the cast, Dalton, even Robert Davies say this was the most Fleming film ever, although it was the first one not taking its title from a book. And 2, they wanted to be modern and contemporary. You can imagine the writing conversations. Richard Maybaum and Michael Wilson. They were probably saying, who are the bad guys of the world? If literary Bond was taken out of the 50s and put into the 80s, what would his mission be? And this film definitely takes place in the 80s. Some people say this film failed. Its need and want to be contemporary really makes it stick out amongst the series. Some films do this. This one leaned into the darker elements of that era. And I think there's some greatness in it. Also, before you get into it, there's that great story about this film and its title. Apparently it was initially called License Revoked, but United Artists said, no, we can't release it in America under that title because the average American doesn't know what the word revoke means. Americans are brilliant. So to appeal to the American audiences, they called it License to Kill. It's funny, the 80s had a number of defining features, but something that really defined this film was this. Miami Vice. I know Miami Vice doesn't scream Bond, but once again, I say the writers wanted to ask the question, who are the villains of this world? And they found Pablo Escobar. And once you look at the film through that lens, you can never unsee it.
Plata o plomo.
Simply, it's easier for the politicians to take silver than lead.
And that was how they tackled this film. They were going to make it in Key West, Florida and Mexico. It was the first Bond film not to have production in England. And what we get is quite interesting. I love films that are ambitious, ones that swing for the fences. There are some misses, but when this film is good, I love it. It's definitely one of the most rewatchable Bond films. As I was saying, they didn't just want to make a modern movie, they wanted to make a modern Fleming story. And when the film commits to this line, it's at its most interesting. During the story, we also get something new. Bond going rogue. It was an extra layer to the story. Bond is on his own, acting on his own, no protection from Her Majesty's government. Despite the title of the film, he doesn't have a license to kill. Now it's just a trope of the series. Bond loves going rogue. In License to Kill, Bond is driven by vengeance. His friendship with Felix Leiter forces him to go after Sanchez, no matter what the cost. Also, there's some kind of cute writing things that happen during the film. They really appeal to me, like the scene at Hemingway House.
Effective immediately. Your license to kill is revoked, and I require you to hand over your weapon. Now. I need hardly remind you that you're still bound by the Official Secrets Act.
I guess it's a farewell to arms.
Or Pam Bouvier using a cover name of Kennedy. And what I really love about this movie is the middle portion. They pull from Kurosawa's Yojimbo. Bond shows up in Mexico City. Ethnos City. He then goes about trying to dismantle Sanchez's organization from the inside. Without the tools of MI6 at his disposal, he has to be smarter this time. Talk about Craig being a force of nature, but Dalton is absolutely that in this film. Dalton really wanted his Bond to be more brutal than any before. We get glimpses in The Living Daylights, but this time he's all in.
The first question you ask a producer is, what do you want of me? Do you want me to carry on in the vein that's been set? Or do you want to set off on a new course? The safe, the easy answer is to say, stick with it as it is. In which case, I guess I'd have said no. Roger was brilliant at what he did, but I couldn't simply copy what he'd done. The movies have become somewhat pastiche. Before you go too long, you've become a parody of yourself. You've lost depth, you've lost texture, you've lost contradictions. You start to get shallow. What makes these movies work? What is it that got them going? You've got to go back to the beginning. Here was a hero who murdered in cold blood. Bam, 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 bam. The dirtiest, toughest, meanest, nastiest, brutalist hero we'd ever seen. This is what started those movies.
Shocking.
I wanted to bring people back to believing in this character, to bring my reality to it. I guess I've always liked a challenge.
Such an intense man. On a side note, met him once and he was very nice. Not that intense. But in real life, he's huge. You could believe him being a killer. Some people think just because Dalton only did the 2 films, he wasn't a good Bond. But look at this.
You know the tradition? The next one who catches this is the next one who...
No. Thanks, Stella. It's time I left.
Oh, James. Did I say something wrong?
He was married once, but it was a long time ago.
He's so good here. Or maybe this is more to your liking.
Watch the birdie, you bastard.
This Bond is a real assassin. This film takes Fleming and throws him into the period. And when I see scenes like this, I think, wow, that's Bond.
Your uncle?
Let's make this a proper family reunion. Give me a gun.
Remember what I said about Bond having to be smart? Without the tools and the capital of MI6 behind him, Bond hijacks a plane full of Sanchez's drug money, then uses Sanchez's own money to launch an operation of taking him down. This man tortured Felix Leiter by feeding him to a shark, and then killed Felix's wife. Bond will not stop, even if he's going unsanctioned. I told you this got dark. With also some of the most brilliant action sequences the series has ever seen. They really tried to do this for real. We have the MI6 regulars. But there's also a great cast around Dalton in this film. Kerry Lowell plays Pam Bouvier. The way she fits into the story and the plot is really interesting. It just adds complications to what used to be very straightforward films. It's almost like a prototype for the Quantum of Solace thing. Pam is a person with her own motivations, and Bond is actually getting in the way of that. I think Talisa Soto is great. She really sells the being a captive of Sanchez. There's more than just Bond and his revenge mission going on here, which is constantly brought up to Bond in this film. If Bond has an arc, he realizes there is more than just his personal vendetta. And the young Benicio del Toro.
Don't worry. We gave her a nice honeymoon.
And Robert Davi. He's actually one of the great villains in the series. I don't know why he doesn't come up more often. He doesn't have the usual tropes Bond villains have. The cat, the huge underground lair. All he has is his screen presence and charisma, and it carries him through the film. You believe who he is. In this film, Davi doesn't need any of the tropes. And then side by side, Bond and himself look like mirror images of each other. There is something interesting going on with the relationship between Bond and Sanchez. And maybe they have a lot of similarities. So I know this film can be super 80s, but that's not my criticism. Bond films are always time capsules of the period in which they're made. Some of the problems of this film is it falling back on decades old habits the series had formed. It was like muscle memory. They sometimes tried to go for one-liners and jokes when this film really just needed to hold the tension. For example, this happens in the climax. And this is a great stunt. But maybe this would have just done. Q arrives in Isthmus and he has to give Bond gadgets. Really, Dalton's Bond, especially because he's rogue, he just needed C4 and a sniper rifle. I'm actually mixed over the criticism of Q showing up because I think this scene is touching.
You on?
Goodbye, Q. Thanks for all you've done.
What?
You're a hell of a field operative. Now go. I'll see you back in London.
I can't explain why, but they both sell it. Maybe it's the history. We'd seen Desmond Llewellyn for so long. He's looking older now. Back in Thunderball, he hated being in the field. Now, he wants to go and help James. Maybe it's because he's fond of him finally. So I've rambled about some of the things I really like about this Bond film. This was an exercise in why is it even in my top 10? Why do I love rewatching it? So what am I saying? When I was growing up, Brosnan was James Bond. I remember the weekly James Bond marathons, and this film was always the last film in that marathon. And although I didn't realise it at the time, it was quite symbolic because this is probably the last of the old James Bond films. In my Never Say Never Again video, I talked about the Bond family. After this film, there was a big shake-up of the Bond family. No more Richard Maybaum writing. John Glenn stepped down as a director. Maurice Binder passed away. After casting Pierce, Chloe Broccoli let Michael and Barbara take the reins as producers. Faults and all, this film was the end of an era. Not just the Dalton era, but the last of the old James Bond movies and the team behind them. Things would definitely change in the 90s. So give this film a watch. It is a super unique Bond film for its time, and maybe, similar to me, you'll like it. As always, thanks for watching. If you like this video, you know what to do. Although we're back in the Bond drought, I won't stop making these videos. So please subscribe too. Quick thank you to broadsheet.ie for sharing my video the other week. It makes a difference. And that goes to everyone else watching this. Thanks for sharing the videos. Thanks for watching. Keep safe, everyone. Bye.